All right, everybody, welcome back. We are diving deep today into Charlotte, North Carolina.
The Queen City.
The Queen City, that's right. We're looking at the rental market there for anybody thinking about making a move. And we are consulting our handy-dandy guide here.
Always handy.
Yes, always. The Renter's Guide for Charlotte, NC from apartmentneighborhoods.com.
Good website.
It is a really good one. Gives a lot of good overviews and insights, and I think it's going to be really helpful for our deep dive today.
Definitely.
So yeah, anybody out there thinking of moving to Charlotte wants to know where to live. What's it like? Let's just jump right in. What were some of your big takeaways when you're looking through this thing?
Well, I mean, Charlotte's a really interesting city. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. right now.
So yeah,
a lot of people moving in, and that has some really interesting effects on the rental market.
I bet.
On the one hand, you have a lot of new construction,
Sure
new
do.
apartment buildings popping up all over the place.
Right.
And, that's great for people who are looking for, brand new amenities.
State of the art.
Exactly. All the bells and whistles. On the other hand, though, it can drive up prices.
That's the downside, right?
Exactly.
So is Charlotte still affordable compared to some of the other big cities out there? Because that's always the question on everyone's mind.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, it is still relatively affordable compared to, say, like New York,
Right.
San Francisco, LA, but it's definitely getting more expensive.
Yeah.
And, you're going to find, if you're looking for a deal, you're going to have to look a little harder than you might have had to a few years ago.
I see. Now, this website, it is in the business of connecting renters with apartments. So is there anything we should keep in mind in terms of like their perspective or their potential biases when we're looking at this data?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good website. They have a lot of, good information.
They seem legit.
Yeah, they seem legit. They've been around for a while. But yeah, I mean, like you said, they are, they're in the business of, helping people find apartments.
Of course, yeah.
They want to make it sound appealing. So, take everything with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But I think they do a pretty good job of kind of presenting a balanced picture.
Okay, great. Well, let's paint a picture for our listeners. Can you tell us about some of these neighborhoods? Because you mentioned they're diverse. What are a couple of them that maybe stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one that really jumped out at me was South End. Have you ever been to South End?
I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah, it's like the trendy,
Trendy spot.
yeah, the up and coming spot. Lots of young people, lots of, kind of a cool vibe.
Nightlife.
Nightlife, yeah. Lots of breweries.
Oh, fun.
The guide actually mentions this place called the Old Mecklenburg Brewery,
Okay.
which is like a really popular spot. They've got a beer garden, outdoor seating.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, and just like a real kind of, bustling atmosphere. So that's definitely one to check out if you're looking for that kind of vibe.
Okay, so that's South End. Trendy, up and coming, lots of young people, nightlife. What about if you're looking for something a little different?
Yeah, so if you're looking for something a little more maybe family friendly,
Sure.
a little quieter,
Yeah.
Ballantine is a good option. Have you heard of Ballantine?
I have it.
Okay, so Ballantine is south of the city.
Okay.
It's a little more suburban,
Got it.
but it's got great schools.
Okay.
It's got, lots of parks and green spaces.
That's nice.
And it's also got this big corporate park
Okay.
called the Ballantine Corporate Park. And that's actually a big draw for a lot of families because,
Oh, right there.
jobs right there. Exactly. You can live and work in the same area.
Commute's easy.
Exactly. So that's a big plus. And they also have like, a farmer's market. They have an amphitheater.
That's fun.
So it's a little more, kind of family oriented.
I was going to say a little more chill than the brewery scene
Exactly.
in South End.
Totally different vibes.
Totally different vibes. Well, that's great. I mean, so it does sound like there is something for everybody, which is awesome. But of course, we want to make sure our listeners are fully prepared. Let's talk about some of the practicalities. What about average rent prices?
Yeah, so the guide gives some average rent prices for different neighborhoods.
Right.
And like we said, take it with a grain of salt.
Always.
But it gives you a general idea
Okay.
of what to expect. And, it does vary quite a bit depending on the neighborhood.
Sure.
South End, as you might expect, is going to be on the higher end.
Right. Yeah.
Ballantine is a little more mid-range.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some neighborhoods that are even more affordable.
And are there any other websites or resources that you recommend people check out in addition to this one, just to kind of get the full picture of pricing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are tons of websites out there.
So many.
Zillow, Trulia, Apartments.com. Just do a quick Google search. You'll find tons of options. And I would definitely recommend checking out a few different ones.
Yeah, good advice.
Just to kind of get a sense of, what's out there and what you can expect to pay.
Great tip. And then what about transportation? You mentioned Charlotte's got a light rail.
Yeah, they have a light rail system called the LYNX Blue Line,
Okay.
which is actually pretty good.
Okay.
It runs north-south through the city, so if you live and work along that line, you're in good shape. But Charlotte is a pretty sprawling city.
I was going to say that, yeah.
It's spread out, so
Car dependent.
it can be pretty car dependent, yeah. Especially if you're looking at some of the neighborhoods further out from the city center. So I would definitely, factor in the cost of transportation,
Absolutely.
whether it's a car or ride sharing or
Whatever it might be.
public transportation.
And speaking of further out from the city center, what are some things that people should keep in mind if they're looking for an apartment in Charlotte? Like, are there any sort of Charlotte-specific quirks they need to be aware of?
That's a good question. I mean, I think one thing is just that, Charlotte is a pretty dog-friendly city.
Well, that's good to know.
So if you have a dog, you're in luck. A lot of apartments are pet-friendly.
Nice.
But, as always, just do your research.
Right.
Read the reviews. Look at the photos.
Make sure everything checks out.
Exactly. And, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely. This has been super helpful. I think this is going to give all of our listeners out there a great foundation as they start their Charlotte apartment search. Any parting thoughts for them as they go out into the wild world of the Queen City rental market?
Well, I think, we talked about how diverse the neighborhoods are and how, the city's changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
So I would just say, as you're doing your research, as you're thinking about where you want to live, really think about, what's important to you.
Yeah.
What kind of lifestyle are you looking for?
Right.
And how do you see yourself fitting into this kind of evolving cityscape? Because it's a really exciting time to be in Charlotte.
It sounds like it.
But it's also, it's a city in transition.
Right.
So, just be prepared for that and be excited about the possibilities.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all this amazing insight. And to all of our listeners out there, best of luck in your Charlotte apartment hunt. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.